the camera a little bit. Head is showing
Okay,
so low.
Today is one of our webinar that we presented by the US Bank, but before that, we will by Jacob, but we would like to talk about who we are and what we are. My name is Chris Gan. I'm the president of Wisconsin Chinese Chamber of Commerce, and over here we also have Wen Bing, who is executive director of WCCC, and we also have Ziming. Ziming is the IT manager and the treasury of the Wisconsin Chinese Chamber of Commerce. This program is funded by the Department of Administration from the Wisconsin under the ARPA grant, and we want to give best of the best to all the members and to whoever comes to here to gain knowledge. So what is actually Wisconsin Chinese Chamber of Commerce and what we have actually benefit? So majority of them, we got $1.5 million grant. That what we do is that we do webinars, we do digital marketing, and to promote your business and to promote Wisconsin. And we have a lot of business networking and many different kinds of events that will combine with the mainstreams, with the Asian Americans to come together to promote the state of Wisconsin. So for us, we can actually volunteer to us, and we also have when you receive the email, we do have a donation button. So if you would like to donate it, please donate at least $5 to the Wisconsin Chinese Chamber of Commerce as we get along. But if you find any grant outside that wants to combine, if you have a project, we'll write the grant with you guys. And also maybe the grants could be foundation grants, could be ARPA grants or state grants. We'll try to help the community. And we also, when you join the chambers, we have this very nice headquarters in WCCC over here. All our members can use these places. And we also link to various 19 Chamber of Commerce. And we also link from many different from mainstream, including basically some of the mayors and some of the state representatives too. So when you join us, we will have a chance for your business to be part of our WCCC directory. And this directory will be very powerful, and you have all these free webinars to build your business and to build your Wisconsin. And then we also, besides this grant, besides this diverse business grant, we also have received the Microsoft grant, and we will promote, we could do Microsoft grant, we have a Google grant, and also have a Main Street grant. We are, within this year, we have helped 6 of our members to get $60,000 of grant. So we work as a community, we work as a family, and we want to build the state of Wisconsin. And the person on the left is Jacob. Jacob is an SBA loan officer from US Bank and focusedly exclusively in the SBA 7A and 504 lending projects. These are many big giant terms, and he will explain to you what are those. So he spent his whole entire life in Southeast Wisconsin, and has a big passion for helping finance, helping you, helping small business, helping Asian businesses to be who they are. When he is a Wisconsinite and graduate from UW Milwaukee, and with business finance, and spent 16 years of great experience on financial consulting and lending industry. His experience is definitely in the commercial real estate, heavy equipment, machinery, transportation, and material handling. Jacob is definitely a proud father, have two girls, and he enjoy cooking. One day he'll come here and cook in WCCC, and we'll introduce him. You've seen here what he is. He's very interested in cooking, fitness, and spending time outdoor. And that is Jacob. And like right now, I'd like to pass for this time to our executive director, WCCC, Wisconsin Chinese Chamber of Commerce, treasurer and IT manager, Ziming, first to talk about this wonderful digital marketing program. Go ahead, Ziming.
Yeah, I don't want to take time to talk more about this. I think Chris already, speak a lot of things regarding WCCC. I will hand that over to Wenbin if he wants to say a few words before we actually get started.
I will speak in Chinese, therefore some people who are not so familiar with English can understand. 就是说，这个我做生意做了大概将近30年，回想起来，最重要的一件事就是我有过一个非常好的这个 line of credit， 就是银行的这个信誉贷款，加上equipment mortgage and property mortgage， 所以3笔主要贷款。这3笔贷款是否能够在经济困难的时候呢，这样能够维持我的运转。经济好的时候呢，你可以存下来一些钱，但经济不好的时候，你可以继续保持运转。但是每个银行是不一样的，有些银行呢，比如说 Chase， 它不会给你做任何贷款，因为 Chase 主要是服务于1亿美元或者以上的客户，小客户的话，他要你的钱来做 wealth management， 但他不会帮你贷款。这个特别小的银行呢，现在有麻烦，他们一般来讲是给小企业贷款，但是现在比较麻烦就是什么呢？现在大家都在把钱从小银行取出来，往大银行转，而小银行呢，他们自己过去的这个固定投资的项目呢，由于这个联邦利率越来越高，所以他们开始赔钱。所以因为他们赔钱，大家怕这小银行倒闭，所以都把钱纷纷取出来，所以小银行贷款的可能性现在越来越小。那么怎么办呢？就是最好的方法就是像 US Bank 这样的这个美国银行，像 Jacob 代表这个银行，他们是全美国的最大的银行之一，同时他们给小企业贷款，这是在大银行里边非常少见的一种大银行里边的小企业行为。所以我是觉得我们非常有幸能够听一下 Jacob 介绍一下大的银行怎么给小企业贷款，但是他们贷款是通过 SBA， 就是美国小企业局的担保，他们一般小企业局担保80%的贷款额，剩下的贷款呢是由这个银行自己担保，所以没有小企业的这个贷款的话，他们一般不愿意给你担保这么多的钱，但是他们又分了好几种，有些是 line of credit， 就是你用的时候就取，不用的时候就在那放着，这个有好多具体技术细节，这会不会讲？我希望每一个小企业都有一个 at least line of credit for couple $100,000。我过去赚的公司的时候，一直保持在将近100万这样，但是看你做什么了，你要做的钱不需要太多，你希望可能保持至少几十万。line of credit very important。然后呢，就是像 7B 这样的贷款，来给你买房子啦、买设备啦，是长期点贷款。这个我们待会儿听这个 Jack 详细介绍。如果有谁有问题的话呢，随时可以在这个问题那栏提出来，然后子明会停下来专门问这个Jack， 你们可以用中文问，也可以用英文问，因为子明这方面没问题的，是吧？我们也希望这个小企业能够克服最大的难关，也就是小企业每10年90%几的小企业都倒闭了，倒闭的最主要原因就是 cash flow， 就没有现金流，而没有现金流的话呢，就需要贷款。如果银行给一笔贷款的话呢，你可以克服这个障碍，克服困难。当克服完困难之后，你会变成更强壮的企业。What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That's always the case. So you can survive some of the lows, and you get to the highs. You will make money in the long run. 就是最终你要如果能够熬过企业的难关，大家都会挣钱。但是怎么熬过难关，就要靠银行贷款，银行的这个 line of credit。所以我们非常有幸能有这个 Jacob。我旁边是这个Jonathan Ward， 是这个美国退伍军人的这个商会的这个副总裁，所以我们一块来参与这个演讲。这个他曾经为这个微北工作过，也是一个非银行的银行贷款，也是对这个贷款过程非常熟悉的一个人，所以他可能回答一些问题。Okay, now Jacob, thank you. Your turn.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you so much, Webin and the Chamber for giving me this time. And I really want to make this time about you guys, about the Chamber. So I'm going to talk a little bit about SBA and what I think is some of the most important things to remember. And then I want to open it up for questions because I think that's maybe the more beneficial thing that that we can talk about with the Chamber. So I'll start with the first slide here. So what is SBA? And, you know, just a brief history is that it was enacted in 1953 by Eisenhower. And the purpose of SBA is to level the playing field with large business and corporations. And the primary lending programs that they've come up with is the 7A program, which is the most utilized program of them all. The 504, microloans, and disaster relief, like we saw with PPP loans. Next slide, please.
对，我这再讲一下，就是我们过去在 过去3年中得到的 PPP 贷款都是从 SBA 来的，所以 SBA 是小企业的大概最大的帮助。Go ahead.
So the 3 R's of SBA, and the purpose of SBA is to recapitalize a business through lines of credit or working capital, to restructure a business by extending payments or lowering them if there's savings, and by retaining and preserving capital. So those are the main purposes of the program. It's also to grow business and to grow jobs as well. Next slide, please. You know, when I think of SBA, I think of, you know, what's the unique thing about it? What's the big selling point? I think it's flexibility. You know, you can get longer terms, lower payments. You can fund multiple uses in one project. You can have a choice of interest rates, both fixed and variable, and there's no balloons with these loans. Next slide, please.
What do you mean by no balloons?
No balloons means that you're not going to have a loan and then have a balance at the end. It'll be these are set up for full payouts.
Yeah, that's 这现在好多小银行的问题就是你的 loan 是3年的或者5年的，5年之后你必须付清，而这个 SBA loan 的话不存在这个问题，所以马上可以继续延，不断延期。Go ahead.
So how do SBA loans differ from standard business loans? And we'll break this out on a chart after this. I think it's a little bit easier to see, but SBA loans are up to 90% financing. You're going to see in conventional lending that a lot of times 80% is going to be the max. So you're going to have to come up with at least 20% on most conventional loans. SBA terms can be 25 years. A lot of conventional loans are 5 to 7 years terms. Now they can be amortized over 20 years, 25 years, but they're usually not fixed over that time. SBA can give you the ability to fix over the entire period, which is very powerful. And we talked about no balloons, and the business has to be for profit and meet the guidelines. So there's a little bit more rules with SBA. Conventional loans can lend to nonprofits. SBAs cannot. Next slide, please.
So yeah, just a quick question. So when you say 90% financing, that means another 10% you have to pay down payment or something like that?
Yes. So not for all loans, but for most of loans, you will have to have some type of equity stake in the loan. And I'll talk a little bit more about this in some slides further down the road, but 10% down is kind of like a lot of times the bare minimum in lending in general. And SBA, like a lot of other lenders, they want the borrower to have some type of stake in the loan because they think that that's important. If you have stake in a loan, then you're going to want to make sure that that's successful because you're not going to want to lose your own money. So 10% a lot of times is the barrier of entry for a lot of SBA loans. Lines of credit, that's not 10% down, but certainly for commercial real estate or equipment, at least a US bank.
Okay.
And this is a chart that kind of breaks this down for more of the visually minded people here. I think one of the real takeaways of this is when you look at the minimum time in business. Conventional wants 2 years. You know, a lot of banks think that's almost too light. SBA, you don't need any time in business. So you can allow for startups, and very, very few conventional lenders will lend to startups. So if you're starting a business, a lot of times you will have to go through the SBA program. Next slide, please.
Yeah, I have a question here. So the prepayment penalty, right, for conventional, what does it mean? Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, that's another interesting thing too. The prepaid penalty, a lot of times there won't be any prepaid penalties in 7A loans. Now, when it comes to paying that loan off more aggressively, some banks might not allow that. They might say, okay, they just want the payment, or they will allow you to modify the rate only if rates, go up or something. The bottom line is that there's a special calculation within the bank, and they call it break funding. And you don't really know what that is, but normally there's a penalty with it. It's a bank internal calculation.
Okay, thank you.
So 7A loans, I think a lot of times they're kind of separated between real estate and non-real estate. And the reason for that is real estate loans, or if you have over 51% real estate in a loan in a 7A, you can use a 25-year amortization. So that's going to give you a lower payment. If it doesn't have real estate, well, a lot of times the max is going to be 10. 10 years will be the max. So if you can have real estate, it's a lot of times easier to cash flow something over a 25-year period than it would be a 10-year period. So a lot of people use SBA for real estate, and in SBA, a lot of times it breaks it out between real estate and non-real estate because that's how you set the terms up.
So real estate, you need to be 51% as a part of the real estate part of the loan. Otherwise, if it's a totally real estate, 100% real estate, I heard that you have to have 51% usage of your own development. The other 49% could be rental, right?
Yeah, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this here in one of the next slides here. But I think that's a very important piece, and that's kind of goes into one of the caveats, right? Like, where would conventional be a little bit better than SBA? Well, if you had more of your building rented out than you were occupying. SBA, like Wenbin says, it requires 51% owner occupied space within that facility if they're taking out an SBA loan. If it's not an SBA loan, it's really up to the lender, but a lot of times it's 40%. And the maximum loan is $5 million. There's really no maximum loan.
The $5 million can be a combination of half, 51% real estate. The other one could be operational loans for equipment and payrolls and whatever.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, you can do almost a $5 million loan in real estate too. It doesn't have to be 51% allocation just in real estate or not. It figures into the more of the term piece. Yeah, the
minimum is 51%. But let's say $5 million. It's a $2.6 million maybe real estate. The rest is operational loans, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, we get a little bit of feedback on my mic here too. I don't know, a little echo, but I think I may have went away.
Yeah, let's say you have a $5 million loan, and $2.6 million of that is real estate, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have $2.4 million that can be used as operational loans for cash flow, for right, whatever else equipment purchase.
Yes, and that can be all in one.
Yeah, 500万的贷款里边可以是260万，51是做房地产的，剩下的话就可以作为这个现金流用，买设备了、发工资了，这个各种各样的用途。所以这个是这个多用途的，但其中必须51%是房地产，就可以借到500万，剩下的钱的话，当地银行可以再借给你，所以你可以到700万、800万，但是 SBA 只给你500万。Go ahead.
So yeah, there's a question here.
Go ahead.
Someone asked, Jose asked for a question. So you can get a loan for commercial property to run your business, can you?
Absolutely, you can.
Okay.
Yes, you can. And I will tell you that if you're already renting a space right now and you have that expense, That's a little bit easier to do because it's not a new cost. It's an expense that you're already expensing. And so it's really just kind of a swap in expenses. Those are some of the more popular deals to do in commercial real estate. When people say, you know, I've had enough of renting. I either need a bigger space or I want equity in this building. That a lot of people use the SBA program for that.
The SBA program is not used for home mortgage, home loans, right?
No,
it's all
no,
commercial loans.
it has to be
right.
for commercial, no residential. It's only SBA is Small Business Administration, so it has to be a business, and it has to be a for-profit business.
所有的这种贷款只是给企业贷款，不能给个人的房地产贷款。Go ahead.
So that's interesting also. So you're saying if I apply a loan for my commercial property, and they can use that funding for operating my business?
You could have a mix of proceeds where conventional loans are a lot of times broken up by, okay, here's a commercial real estate loan, here's a line of credit, here's this, and they're all separate loans. This
Right.
is multiple allocations into one loan.
So then at the time when I apply for the loan, I have to say, not this loan is not only for my commercial property, that's also for some operating costs for my business, is it? Or I just simply apply for commercial property loan, then I'll use that for operating my business?
You have to detail, put it this way, you can't say I need $800,000 and not have any documentation of where all the money's going to.
Right. Okay.
So the building would be documented for the sales price. And then if you needed, let's say, working capital or a line of credit, then you would detail exactly what those funds would be used for. And it would have to be eligible.
All right. So yeah, I think that's kind of a clarification for that question. The question is that, can I get a loan for commercial property to run business? The answer could be no, unless if you specify the usage, how are you going to use it when you apply for the loan, is it?
Yeah, you put it this way, you're not getting extra money more than the commercial real estate property is going to sell for or be used, because that money is going to be sent directly to that seller. If you needed more funds on top of a commercial real estate loan, you could certainly do that, but it would have to be specified and it would have to be documented.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Basically, if you have a $1 million loan, 500,000 is used to purchase a property or whatever property related. Then the other $500,000 can be operational loans for line of credit or whatever your operation will need. Right, Jacob?
Yes, that is correct. And that's all kind of in one loan, where we talked about conventional loans, those would be kind of separately broken out.
Yeah. So to clarify that one more time, is that 50% is real estate, the rest can be all considered as a line of credit too, right? You pay the interest.
Well, put it this way, the 50% only come into play when you're talking about owner occupied and the term.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want a 25-year term, then you have to have over 51% real estate, so you get all of it. But you don't, there's no set, well, there are set allocations and maximums depending on what you're trying to do. But there's a lot of flexibility on how you can, if you have a project for $3 million, they might not necessarily say you can only have this or this or this in this bucket, depending on what you're trying to do.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is that, okay, let's say you have a $500,000 used for real estate. The other $500,000, you don't have to pay mortgage, you don't have to pay fixed monthly rate, because you will only pay it when you use it, like a line of credit.
The lines of credit are broken out separately.
Okay.
because
But can that be part of the loan?
you're not paying on that unless you draw from it.
That's right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Good. So basically, you can break down your loan into two pieces. One is the real estate. You have a mortgage. You have a fixed rate. You have a term. But the other part could be just operational. When you need it, you draw it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's kind of like a line of credit you mentioned, right? So I think that
That
mostly use that for operating your business if you want, right? It's kind of cash flow that you have. If you use it, you pay for the interest. If you don't use it, you pay zero.
Yeah.
Jacob, a question, the same question. The same question here. Just for example, the property is $2 million. So we buy the property. So can the SBA loan use it? Like for example, this $2 million, we only use $1 million, just like what being saying, and the other 50% and use it as a line of credit for 90% of the 2 million. Would that work? For example, the property is 2 million. Okay, so we get a loan of SBA, using it to buy $1 million to buy the property in, and maybe we have our own deposit of 50%, and the other one is like 40% of it, use it as a line of credit. Is that possible or no? And that's the first question. The other second question is, I know that this loan is to be profitable. So as an individual, you cannot get SBA loan. It needs to go to an entity or a profit organization to apply for SBA loan. Is that true?
Yeah. The first thing is it has to be a viable entity. It has to be set up. It has to be an enacted, business, and it has to be for profit. When you talked about your lines of credit, a lot of times, lines of credit is going to be maxed out at like $350,000. So a lot of times people will take out a line of credit, and then they'll also take out a term working capital loan because says, oh, I need to staff up my company. So you can split it between lines of credit and working capital. Line of credit is different because you don't pay on the full principal like you do a term loan, only when you take it out. But that's a smaller amount that you can take out. The lines of credit are.
When you say line of credit, that is not part of the SBA loan. It's just like another traditional loan.
It is part of it. It's separate. It's separated. Yeah, it's separated because it's not calculated the same, the payment. So it has to kind of be separated. When it's a term loan,
it's two different
fixed.
SBA loan.
Yeah.
So when you purchase it, is an SBA fixed loan, and the other line of credit is an SBA term loan. Is that what you're trying to say?
They break out the lines of credit kind of separately because it's not the same calculation formula on the monthly payment. Term loan, if you take out $100,000. Good.
Yeah. One is every month you have a fixed payment. The other one is when you use it, you pay it.
Correct.
Yeah. So line of credit is whenever, let's say 100,000 deposit into account, right? If you use like 10,000 this month, you only pay the interest for the 10,000, right?
Yeah,
and then when you return it back, you don't have to pay anything. As long as you maintain, the 100,000 on your account. That's how I understand it. I could be wrong.
Yeah, a lot of times, I don't know how everyone's lines of credit work, but I know, a lot of times the first 3 years might only be interest only. And let's say it's a 10-year line of credit. The next 7, you have to pay back the principal and the interest.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of times people will take quite a bit out because they're only paying interest only. But after that 3-year period of time, then they have 7 years to pay it back. And if they don't have a balance, well, then they don't have to pay anything back. But a lot of businesses do have balances, and then they have 7 years to pay off that.
But after 3 years, is that still called line of credit?
Yes, but you don't have to. Yeah, it's a line of credit, but it's kind of terming out based upon.
Yeah, because it's not line of credit anymore. If I don't know, because that's
It's
what I'm told. You know, I have the impression if line of credit, the principle of that is only you pay interest when you spend it, and
Yeah,
when you return
that is
money
correct.
back, you don't have to pay any interest, right? And
Yeah,
if
well,
you're saying after 3 years, right, so you have to pay interest, and would that convert to different loan or something?
I
you
think
pay
Jacob was
pay
saying,
interest on the balance. If you take something out, for instance, let's say for 3 years, let's say you had a $200,000 line of credit, and
Right.
for 3 years you took out 100,000. It just stayed 100,000. Well,
Yes.
you pay interest on that $100,000 only.
Yes.
But after the 3 years, now you have to pay principal and interest on the 100,000 on the next 7
Oh, if you're not paying it back.
if you didn't pay it back.
Okay. Okay.
it's converted into a term loan if you don't pay back in timely.
Yeah, that convert to different loan, I guess. That's what it.
Yeah, it's a little bit confusing on that fact, but the bottom line is this: they don't make you pay all of it back right away on like a term payment schedule. It's more interest based at first to give you a little bit of relief, and then you eventually have to get on a plan to start paying that back. And you can pay it back right away if you wanted to, but a lot of times people need that extra time to pay it back.
Oh, so it sounds like the first 3 years you take it as line of credit, but if you're not able to pay it back, now it turned into like a term, right? Like say 7 years or something, different loan program.
You have to pay it off in full in 7 years because there's no balloons.
Okay.
就是 let me use that Chinese to interpret a little bit is that 如果你要是有一个100万贷款，50万可以作为50万多一点可以作为买这个房地产，剩下的钱呢可以作为一个这个商业信誉，就是你随时可以提取的，随取，取的时候付利息，不取的时候呢就一分钱不付，是吧？所以你的100万贷款，50万是每个月都月付，然后每年付。但是呢，剩下的50万是用的时候取，不用的时候不付钱。但是如果你用的钱呢，
他怎么会给你50万贷款呢？对不？你如果买的房子是这个50万的话，你不会拿到1个 million 的贷款。
他就是这个意思，因为你这个申请的时候呢，你同时申请，你申请买房子是50万，同时你申请50万是作为这个 operation 用的一个。
Yeah, that makes sense. Yes. 如果那 you get the proof.
你申请一块。
Yes.
你申请的时候，你申请连 business 带房地产一块申请，而房地产占51%，这个其他部分49%，所以你等于点 line of credit 房地产一块申请，但是你的 line of credit 你可以不交利息，你没有用，用的时候你再交利息。但是如果你用了3年了之后呢，你还有好多钱你付不起，没有付完，那这个没付完的这个部分呢，就变成一个 mortgage， 就变成每个月必须固定付，否则的话你每个月只交利息，不需要交这个本钱的。我借了10万，我就交10万的利息。我还了10万就完事儿，就什么不交，这是这个非房地产这个部分，就加在一起的话，你房地产越多，你的这个现金流的能力越强，因为它给你的这个运作余地越大，所以你从这一点来讲的话，一个小企业用 SBA loan 的时候呢，最好是有一个很大的房地产，这样的话你的这个现金流的余地要变大，而且这个很宽裕的一个政策，但是你没有房地产，你拿不到这个钱。比较难拿的这个钱。Okay, all right, Jacob, thank you.
Next slide, please. This is the visual presentation of the difference between SBA and conventional. If you have a new construction loan, you'll need to occupy 60%, Wenbin.
I see.
Yeah, so if it's a construction, you will have to.
Yeah, 你要看新房了，你买旧房是，买旧房是51%， 是房地产。如果买新房的话呢，必须是60%用房地产，40%用于这个现金流随用随取的贷款。Go ahead.
And you can see that the loan term is much higher than conventional here. On the typical loan term, max loan to value, that's what I was talking about, 90 versus 80. Really the minimum that conventional lenders want on like a real estate project is 20%. I'm hearing a little bit more lately too, might be 25 with some people. Next slide, please. So non-real estate loans, not as long of a term. You can't use the 25-year term. You can use the 10-year term, but you can see all the different purposes that you can use it for, whether it's business acquisition, partner buyouts, equipment, debt refinance, working capital, franchise, and expansions. So a lot of uses for the 7A program. It's just you can't do the 25-year unless you got the majority of real estate.
So what's the limit? Is that still $5 million?
Yep.
Jacob, $5 million.
Yep.
I see.
Yeah, but it can be very hard to justify, especially if you just need like a bunch of working capital and lines of credit and things like that. But partner buyouts, business acquisitions, you see a lot of those at very high dollars.
这就是说，这个非房地产也可以贷到500万，但是你要有很强的现金证明你能还这个钱，另外你有一定的这个净资产，对，之后它要审查的更严格一些，比这个有房地产在内贷款的时候要难贷款一些。Okay, good. Go ahead.
One of the benefits of SBA too is SBA loans require collateral, but unlike conventional loans, they don't need 100%. They don't need to be fully collateralized. Meaning that if you had a building and for $1 million and you put down $200,000, well, the rest of the $800,000 the bank has to secure. And usually what they want to secure it is with the real estate at hand or even maybe your personal real estate. So a lot more collateral is needed for conventional. And if you don't have it all, a lot of times it's a deal killer. SBA is unique in that fact where it might not require nearly as much collateral. Okay, next slide, please.
对，就是说你个人的抵押部分可以占的比例很低。我曾经帮一个企业贷到50万的这个 line of credit， 没有任何个人抵押，就是没有任何个人的这个资产需要抵押，就是个人签个字就完事儿了。所以这个看你到时候这个跟他们怎么谈了。所以它这是和常规的银行贷款不一样，就是它在个人抵押方面要求很松，比较容易拿到，比这个一般银行一般不愿意给你这个纯粹信用的这种叫 line of credit 信用贷款。Okay, go ahead.
Well, this is probably Wenbin's favorite slide here. Express line of credit.
Yes.
And that kind of details this 3-year revolving period with the 7-year term that we talked about with lines up to $350,000.
Very, very useful term, very useful program. I hope everybody knows this one. A 3-year revolving period, that means you had to pay everything off within 3 years, right?
No, it's just revolving,
I see.
And then once it's moving, and then at the 7-year period, then you have to start paying that back if you have something.
It's because it turns into term, right?
Then it turns into a term.
Year 4, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense.
这个就是刚才 Jacob 讲的这个小企业最想要的，可以迅速拿到的35万随用随取的这个信用贷款，这个是我觉得每个小企业都应该申请。 ，35万可以帮助很多小企业渡过难关。但是
那你
要是
不是那么好
不知道怎么申请，
拿的，那35万不
也
是那么好
不是那么难，也知道这个过程，知道这个过程，但是
，depend
也
on
没有
your
那么难。
financial situation。
就你看你干什么，你要有一个 projection， 你的 projection 证明确实能够拿回这个钱来，这才给你。你要没有什么很像样的 business plan 的话，他不会给你。但是我确实帮助一个企业拿到过这个钱50万，但是也没有任何 collection， 不是一个 business plan。但是你有一个 past performance， it's important。好 ，go ahead。
I'll cover 504 loans very quickly because it's really a fixed asset based program and it's really, really heavy real estate driven. And what you get with this program is you get not the flexibility, but you get the stability. And how these loans work is that you would have the bank take 50% of the loan. Let's say it's $1 million piece of property. US Bank, for instance, would take $500,000 of that loan. The borrower would have to inject 10%. And then the CDC, which is a community development corporation, they would take the other 40%. And that loan is tied to treasury loans. And so those are very pretty low rates right now. They're about probably in the high fives on the CDC loan. So it's a mix of bank, CDC, and a borrower to make up that 100% allocation. And the whole purpose of this program is usually for large real estate projects and people who want a fixed rate for a very long time.
What's the minimum size for this to qualify for this?
The minimum from my CDC is 350,000 all the way up to 20 million.
就是说是35万到2000万之间才有资格申请这种贷款。这是从社区的这个组织贷款 CDC， 还有这个银行 CDC 给40%，银行给50%，然后这个贷款人给10%，来拿到从35万到2000万之间的贷款。Okay, that's a program I'm not too familiar. Thank you.
Yeah, next slide, please.
Yeah, we have a member in our chamber who is in the process of applying the 504.
Okay.
Close to $10 million. So that's a good one to tell us.
Yeah, we talked about kind of the breakdown of who funds what, but I think this slide is the important part on this is that you can now do debt refinancing in 504. A lot of people don't know this. I'm actually doing one right now. And what you have to do in order to do this is that if you have a 7A loan that was 85% fixed assets, meaning that 85% of it was real estate and equipment at the time of the origination, let's say it was 5 years ago, if that person right now is on a variable rate, like a lot of people are on 7A loans, well, if you can get savings, you can refinance that loan into a 504 program. And now that's a newer option that the SBA has allowed. It's probably only a year or two old, but we're seeing people refinance some 7A loans into the 504 program, where that was not allowed historically for a very long time. So it is a big benefit.
What are the top 2 benefits doing that? It's a longer term or
the benefit, at least on
lower rate?
Yeah, the benefit, at least on the deal that I'm working on, is that person right now is at prime plus 2.75. That's how a lot of 7A loans are calculated right now. US Bank has got a different calculation, but prime plus 275 means that the rate is 11% and possibly climbing. It's not fixed. If it goes down, it can go down, but it can also go up. And so right now, if someone's at 11% interest rate, they're trying to refinance this right now because they don't even know if that's going to be the end. So a lot of high interest rates out there right now on these 7A loans.
So to cover that into 504, you save you can get the lower interest rate because of
You
the
can get-
CDC.
Yeah, you can get points lower easily. 2 to 3 points easy.
Can you get a longer term too?
And you can get a longer term if you need it.
Okay.
In my case, I was
Either
able to
two.
lower the person's payment and lower their term. Which is probably the best case
Jacob,
scenario.
I have a question. Jacob,
Sure.
I have a question here. As you say, the prime plus 2.75 right now is the average 11%. If they go to the 504 SBA loan, what is the present US bank loan rate right now?
Well, that's dependent on project. I will say that right now the CDC rate is, I believe it's about 5.88%. That would be 40% of the loan. 10% would be the down payment. So what's US Bank at? You know, that's all over the place right now, but I would say somewhere in between, I don't know, 7 and 9%, I would say, depending on the project.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
It's hard to say that the rates are moving like crazy.
Okay.
So depending on what you want, how long the loan, it's all factored in. Different loan terms are priced differently. It's all a different price. And usually they're very, very close, but they're still
Thank you.
can vary
Appreciate it.
basis points. Next slide, please. Another visual here, difference between 7A and 504 and a lineup here. I think the big takeaways here is, can you do working capital in a 504? No, you can't. So not the flexibility of the 7A program, but you get the fixed rates and you get the very, very long fixed terms. Next slide, please.
Yeah, I have a question here. So what is prepayment penalty there? Multiple, 3 year?
So the prepaid penalty for 7As can be 3 years. We don't have prepaid penalties in our loans. It can vary by loan, but a lot of times 7As don't have prepaid penalties, but they can have a 3 year up to it. The 504 loans have different structures because they're two separate loans between the CDC and the bank. Most of the time, there'll be a decreasing schedule. It might start out at maybe 6% and then go down over time.
Okay.
So it's a percentage basis off the total amount that you owe.
So 3 year 7A penalty, payment penalty, that's like a percentage, like a 2% or something of the remaining principal, right?
Put it this way, it can be. I'm not very sure about 7A prepaid penalties because none of our US Bank loans include those.
But if you convert from 7A into 504, the conversion process would also involve in payment of penalties first before you convert. If it's within the term of the 3 years, right?
It could potentially, depending on the lender and depending on your type of loan.
Okay.
It could. But like I said, a lot of loans don't have any prepaid penalty on them.
But when we do understand the 3 year and the multiple, I think multiple like different structure, right? You may get different prepayment penalty. What is 3 year?
Because you have the bank and the CDC. I don't know the exact prepaid penalty on the 504s, but I would guess they're more than 3 years, especially if they're going to be 25 years.
3 years? That's what I'm trying to get.
So 3 years means that you have to hold it for 3 years. But the multiple,
You could have,
yeah. After 3 years,
So after 3 years, I start to pay penalty?
No, after 3 years, you don't have to. But the first 3 years, you have to pay penalty. The other way around.
7A could have 3 years
no.
potential.
Okay, I will have to pay penalty for first 3 years if you want to pay it off, right?
If you
Potentially,
want to prepay.
potentially you could.
Yeah, so if I want to pay it off, I need to pay 3 years penalty, look like. Okay.
And it would go down. I mean, the first year would be the heaviest charge, and then it would go down 3, 2, 1, decreasing.
Okay.
Most
Yeah.
likely. I don't, like I said,
Oh, you
US
don't
Bank
know.
doesn't, they don't have prepay penalties on theirs, but SBA, the limit is 3 years on those.
It's
Okay.
probably significant down the road because currently, like what you mentioned, interest rate can be up to 11%. But based on the Fed's goal, eventually the interest rate will be much lower. Let's say 5%. Then you really need to refinance. Even if that means you prepay payment penalties, you may still want to do it. So that makes sense.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, again, I think one of the unique features of US Bank is that we can modify loans too. I'll talk a little bit about that going forward, but you can only modify 7A loans if you are a portfolio lender, and very, very few banks right now are portfolio lenders, meaning that we hold the loan through the whole maturity of the loan. So we're vested in our borrower's success. And when you hold the loan, you can have more flexibility. Most 7A loans, like mortgages or student loans, they're sold on a secondary market. And once you sell them, you can't modify them, and they're completely locked.
So most cases, when US Bank gives out the SBA loans, you hold it, you don't sell, right? Because
No.
SBA loan nature.
We portfolio all of our loans. So that's a very unique setup. There's a couple other companies in the market that do that, but it's very, very rare.
就是说，这个美国银行一旦给贷款的话，他们会自己保持贷款。所以话，将来下一步你要跟他们谈判这个变化的话，是可以谈的。很多 term 不是那么固定，可以跟他们来这个negotiate。但是如果他们像其他银行，很多银行把这个 loan 卖掉了，卖给更大的 consolidator， 那你没法谈了，你多少 term 就多少 term， 你必须完成的 term。所以从这点来讲的话，这个美国银行的这个 SBA loan 是有它的 advantage， 因为他们是 hold it as a portfolio a long time. Go ahead.
Next slide, please. Well, this is, I think, the important pieces here. What are the requirements to get an SBA loan? We talked a little bit about this, but what does a business need? Well, they need to be for profit, like we talked about. They need to be registered and operating legally. So you also have to be in an eligible business. There's some businesses that you cannot be in and get an SBA loan. Like you can't be in the lending business. So US Bank can't get an SBA loan. They forbid gambling, churches, and also businesses involved with marijuana. Those are hard stops for the SBA. You won't get funded with those types of businesses. And you also cannot get an SBA loan if you make more than $5 million net income on an average of 2 years. So Jeff Bezos and Amazon, they're not going to get an SBA loan either. They're far too profitable. So this is really meant for small business. And the SBA says, hey, if you're making over X amount of money, you don't qualify for this loan. In fact, on a personal level too, I can't remember the exact figure, but it's probably around about $14 million of net worth. If you have that high of net worth, then you can't qualify for an SBA loan either, which very few people have, so it's usually not a concern. Next slide, please.
Net, when you see net $5 million, that means your net profit $5 million.
Yeah, most businesses are not netting $5 million.
They usually
So
use that
they-
as a pass.
Yeah, they will buy $5 million of equipment before they pay,
Yeah.
you know,
就是
on $5 million of net
如
income.
果 exactly， 如果是一个企业，年利润超过500万的话，你不能申请这个 SBA 的贷款，不需要帮助。All right, good.
So some people break down like the 5 C's of SBA. What do you really need? Well, you need an injection, right? You need capital. It's very, very hard to get an SBA loan if you have no money. People want to see some type of stake in the game here from the borrowers. So having capital is important. Your credit is important, both business and personal. I've seen really good businesses get declined due to personal credit issues, especially when you have personal credit issues that are recent. You're not cleaning it up. You're going in a decline. That can be very detrimental to the loan process. Capacity or cash flow. That is a really, really important factor in this. The SBA is a cash flow lender, meaning they want to look at your cash flow. If you want a loan, they want to see your historic business cash flow support it, or to see your projections. If it's a startup, support it. If it doesn't, you're going to have a very hard time getting a loan. And the cash flow minimum that the SBA says is that for every dollar of debt that you have, minimum you have to bring in $1.05. So if you're not netting a nickel on every dollar, then you're not technically profitable and you can't get an SBA loan.
When you say cash flow, that means your gross profit, or you're talking about net profit?
No, cash flow is a different calculation. You know, when you talk about net income, that can be decreased by depreciation. And when you have something like what's called a Section 179, where they were allowing people to buy a piece of equipment, let's say for $150,000, and you could expense all of the depreciation in that year. So if you made $150,000, instantly you don't have any net income because depreciation wiped that out. Now, is that truly what happened in your business? No, you probably made $150,000. It's just on paper you didn't have to pay tax that year, and that's where things I think get a little bit tricky. And that's part of my job, is analyzing businesses' cash flow.
The other thing
to make sure that
if it's over 120 days or 90 days receivable, that may not count into the cash flow anymore, right? If it's accrual based.
So we look at the tax returns. Financial statements are very, very important, but a lot of times we're looking at the prior year's performance as a big marker. Because, like this year, a lot of times we're analyzing deals. It's only 2 months into the year, and Wisconsin has some pretty hardcore winters. A lot of businesses don't make any money until it gets warmer in Wisconsin. So it's kind of hard to analyze some businesses early in the year, especially in Wisconsin.
You annualize it and then see year after year how they do in the cash flow.
Yeah, you really have to have a year look to see, and businesses are going to want to, lenders are going to want to see multiple years, because they want to see the trends. They want to see discrepancies. Let's say you made $1 million this year, but the year before you made 5 million, and the year before that you made 10 million. Well, you're on a really negative streak here, even though you're profitable. The banks are going to say, well, what's going on here? Why are you in such a negative trend, even though you're profitable? So that's something that they can look at too, discrepancies year over year. Character. The lenders are going to look at character. They want to make sure that you have the experience and the knowledge to take over whatever project that you're asking for funding. And they also want to make sure that you don't have a lot of past criminal offenses. Felonies, certain misdemeanors can bar you from getting an SBA loan. And then collateral. You don't have to have 100% collateral like conventional financing, but they definitely want to see some type of collateral. If you have equity in your house, you might have to pledge your house. If you have over 25% equity, a lot of times the SBA will want some type of collateral attached to these loans.
Yeah, let me interpret that a little more into Chinese. The C 是一个这个 SBA 评价一个人是不是可以得到这个 SBA loan 的这个贷款的这个原则。第一个就是你的这个整个资产的这个资产能力，就是有多少资产，你自己个人有多少资产，你的净资产有多少，你的这个毛资产有多少，你需要的资产量多大，就是资产运算。第二个呢是你个人的信誉，这个信誉过去曾经是不是有贷款不还的，或者是有个人的其他方面这个信誉方面的问题，查你信誉，这个是很容易的从这个第三方的这个信誉指数可以查出来，然后再看你有没有什么这个诉讼啊之类的东西。第三点是你的这个你的能力，也就是说你的这个现金流的能力。你过去去年产生多少现金？你的现金能不能支持你的贷款这个贷款额？你贷款额每个月的付款是10万块钱，你去年的现金流是不是能够产生一个能够每个月付10万块钱的这个月金的能力？这个现金流可以是一个新的生意的话，就是这么一个现金流的预算；老的生意的话也更容易一些，就看看过去我们3年的变化多大，然后你可以说新的这个贷款之后，你可以扩张，可以有更大的这个现金流，但是你要把这个现金流算出来。然后第4点是这个 character， 你这人为人怎么样？别人有没有说你这个不好听的话的，是吧？有人这个说你这个行为不够道德的，是吧？或者是其他方面这个有关个人的方面这个生活方面问题，吸毒了之类的，是吧？或者是曾经打过架了，或者被人抓过，犯过案了这样的事情。最后一个是 collateral， 就是抵押。抵押部分呢，可以是你的自己房子的这个净资产，或者是你的这个设备的净资产，你得可能把它抵押进去之后，才能够实现你最后的这个贷款额。这5项，这5个 C 是非常重要的这个5项分析方法。每一个都不容易做，每一个都要详细的分析才行。其中最难的可能是 capacity 这个cash flow 现金流的计算，能够证明你能够拿到这个能够每个月能拿出月供来。OK， Jacob。
Next slide, please. So how do you apply for an SBA loan? Despite what probably people think, SBA loans are not government loans. They're actually, or usually bank loans that are backed with a guarantee by the SBA. And depending on the loan, there's different types of guarantees, and that factors in how much a lender will risk. So you need to apply through a bank or some type of qualified SBA lender. There's some people who are not banks who do SBA lending, but they have to be qualified and approved by the SBA. And you know, what do some of the lenders offer? Well, there's a thing called preferred lenders, which is what US Bank is, and a lot of other banks. That allows a bank to do their own internal underwriting without having to submit it to the SBA. So it cuts out one of the steps in the process. So it's not a 2-step process to the SBA, only the approval. And then there's portfolio lenders, which US Bank is also. And those are the lenders that usually are preferred lenders, and they're holding the loans. And when you hold the loans, then you have the flexibility for your customers to possibly modify those down the road. So what if you don't live around a lot of banks and you don't know where to start? Well, there's actually something on the SBA called SBA Lender Match. And if you want banks to compete for your business, you want to talk with people, you can submit your request into SBA Lender Match, and you can put in all of the parameters of your project, what industry you're in, and the banks and the folks who are linked into this matching system, they will get an email and they'll say, this person is looking for this types of project. Would you like to reach out to this person? So you'll get a lot of people calling you in case you didn't know where to start. I guess the only drawback is you don't know who's calling you, and you might get a lot of calls. But that's a good area to start if you just didn't know anything and you didn't have any connections and you didn't live by a bank.
So I have a question here. So would that make a difference if I go through different banks for the same SBA loan program?
Yes, it could look drastically different from company to company.
Oh, okay.
Because at the end of the day, they're not government loans. They're only loans that are partially guaranteed by the government. They're still bank loans. So every bank is going to be a little bit different, but there's core requirements and rules within the SBA that no bank can break. Not if they want the guarantee. So no bank is going to break those bare minimums.
Let me translate that a little bit. Is that 每个银行的标准不太一样，有些银行现在有很大的现金流，需要急需贷款，很积极愿意做这个方面贷款。有些银行呢，现在现金流不足，对贷款变得非常严格，尤其是一些小银行，可以变化非常大。有些小银行非常的很愿意贷款，有些小银行的话，在某段时段不愿意贷款。相对来说比较稳定的，像 US Bank， 他们因为是全国性的这个银行，只有做小银行的事情。这些大银行呢，像那个 Wells Fargo 的话呢，它一般是拿出你的这个存款的一半给你贷款。你要是存了100万，让他来 manage the wealth， 他就50万。那到了 Chase 的话呢，干脆不给小人贷款，小企业或者是个人贷款。这个每个银行在这方面差别非常大，所以我们觉得很有幸请到这个美国银行 US Bank 来解释这个事情，因为他们相对来说是一个比较好的折中选择。Okay, Jacob.
Next slide, please. So let's say you talk with the bank and they're interested and they believe that you're qualified to do this project. What does the documentation look like? Well, you're going to have SBA forms and applications. It's going to include filling out a personal financial statement. You know, anybody who is 20% owner will have to guarantee it. If you're pledging collateral on your house, your spouse might be a limited guarantee on that. But yeah, you'll need your financial statements, tax returns, debt schedules, collateral schedules, and resume and projections if needed. That could be an important piece. And a business lease if you're renting. Next slide, please. Well, that's all the slides that I have. I would like to open it up for any type of questions people had.
So let me play out as a first-time lender to ask for a 7A loan. I guess I have to bring in a business plan. I have to show my assets, show my past performances, and cash flow capabilities. And then there will be many more needed from your side to tell us what more to do. and then I will provide that to you, and then make that complete in about, generally speaking, about a month's process, or let's call that 2 weeks, right?
Well, put it this way. For an SBA loan, if you look on the internet, they'll say it takes 60 to 90 days from start to finish to close. With that said, I think a bank will know pretty quickly whether you could qualify for an SBA loan. Could be a couple days, could be a week. If you have past performance financials to look at, it's going to be a lot easier than a startup. Startups are far more complicated because there's no historical data. So projections and your resume and your experience will be incredibly vital for any type of startup or any type of projection-based loan. Those are some of the more difficult loans to do. But if it's just based upon the business that you're operating right now, I think people can get a pretty good feel of whether you're going to be qualified or not by just running through your financials and your personal debt statements.
And then after that, let's say you qualify with the bank. The bank will tell you that now it's turning to SBA. SBA from there will take about, generally speaking, 2 months to 3 months from their side to finalize their deal, right?
Well, put it this way. I think they use that as an average because there's a lot of moving parts. The borrower has a lot of sway within the time frame. Some people get the paperwork done in a day, and some people get it done in a week. And then you go into a next phase, and if that continually happens, then yeah, you can add weeks onto that process, and that's why I think the average is a little bit higher. But people who are very, very prompt with all the documentation, with all the applications, through all the closing conditions, those loans go much quicker. So it's really dependent. It can vary. It varies greatly.
Just for everyone, if you have a cell phone, you should actually use it and take a picture of Jacob, email, and also phone number. That's very important, and you can always come back to us. Jacob, I have a question. Is that a lot of people who are actually startups or maybe like other businesses who have been in 5 to 10 years businesses, they are not used to this SBA, and of course you require the business plan and all the financial statements. Are there any third parties consultants that actually specialize on these that would help with US Bank, work with US Bank and get a loan? If there are third parties who are out there, you will be able to provide a list to the audience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you were cutting out there a little bit, Chris, but I think that your question is, this is a lot of documentation and paperwork. What if I don't have a business resume? What if I don't know how to put a projection together? There are resources out there through the Wisconsin SBDC. Those folks, a lot of times, are very seasoned professionals that have been in business for decades, and they're helping out the community. And a lot of times these places can be in the UW school systems inside the universities. So it's a service that is paid for by the state to help business owners. And those folks can help you with business plans, and they can help you with projections, and they can do that free of cost. Now, I guess the catch of that would be that you'd have to work around their time. It is a free service, so I'm not saying you could get it done in a day. If you absolutely had to get something done and you didn't want to do a business plan or projection, there's people who specialize in doing that too, and they'll probably do it for, I don't know, probably starting at about $5,000 and going up. But I think it's very, very important for the borrower and the business to do their own business plan and their own projections, because whether they use the SBA program, they use a conventional bank, or they use an outside source like a venture capitalist, your business plan and your projection will be the most important selling piece to those. I mean, you really have to think of it from a lender standpoint. If you're going to lend out money, you want to do it to qualified people, and you want it to do it on a great project and a great story with someone who has experience and is qualified. So I think that's very, very important. The business plan, not to say that you have to make it all up yourself. There's people to help you, but you have to really be involved, because if it doesn't come from you, like how can you sell your business plan and your business to a lender if you have somebody else do it? I think that the people who do well are people who really put the time in and really think that process through, because they have a really good strategy in their head about how they're going to accomplish this.
Will you give the references, list of references, like the university who can help?
So that specific organization is spread across all around Wisconsin, and you'd be lined up with somebody who is in your area. But I can get you, I guess, that general area, and so you could dial down, in your area. And I'm also somebody who can also help bridge connections. I know some of those folks, and I can get the ball rolling with them as well. So if you anytime you need some help, you want a business plan, projections, any SBA questions, feel free to take a picture of this, shoot me an email, shoot me a call. And, if you need a translation and you want to get Webin or Chris involved, be happy to take a call.
I think
Jonathan wants to say something. We will be interested in one-to-one services for our members in the future. So if we have a list to send it to us, that'll be awesome.
Okay.
Jonathan wants to say something, but because he was lending in the lending institution for a little while too.
Well, thanks, and great honor to be part of this, and congratulations on the work of the Wisconsin Chinese Chamber of Commerce, and thanks, Jacob, for your great presentation. So I used to work for the Veterans Business Outreach Center program at WIBIC, and that's also an SBA funded program along with the SBDC. So I work very closely with the SBDC network around the state. In fact, our chamber has funded a veteran military specific consultant at the SBDC. But I will provide to the Wisconsin Chamber leadership a small guide that I put together, which actually has which SBDC is where in the University of Wisconsin system. So I'll make that available to you, and you can share with your membership.
All right. So
大家
会给我们一个列表，不要钱的机构，专门帮助大家申请贷款。张德森是这个退伍军人协会的这方面负责人。谢谢 ，Thank you.
Yeah, it is like 18 minutes over the clock, so.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Jacob. Thank you, everyone, for attending the Wisconsin Chinese Chambers of Commerce webinar. Every week we will have a special kind of stuff. We will have an event that give to others. But do remember, look at the email. If you want to donate, there's a $5 donation. Go back to the email and scroll all the way down. Do donate to the Wisconsin Chinese Chamber of Commerce. We need your funding so we can produce better webinars for everyone for the state of Wisconsin and to all our members and alliances. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good job, Jacob. Good job to you too.